A lot of people are feeling confident about the Detroit Lions in this upcoming 2023 NFL season, but there's a couple offenses that could really derail the Lions season if this defense doesn't step up. Let's talk about them. Now, we all know the Detroit Lions defense was their Achilles heel throughout the 2022 season. And even though things got a little bit better during the end stretch of that season, it still becomes a question mark as they get ready to go into the 2023 season. And to be completely honest, when you look at this schedule, while a lot of us see double digit wins, there are still some offensive matchups that this defense will have to deal with that kind of make you scratch your head a little bit and might give you a little bit of worry as far as can this defense actually rise to the challenge. So, with that said, I made a list of 5 offenses that I think this defense is really going to have to key in on if they expect to pull out the win. Number 5 on this list is the Green Bay Packers. And I know what a lot of you are going to say, but Aaron Rodgers isn't there. And you're right, he's not. But you know who still is? Head coach Matt LaFleur. And Matt LaFleur has been able to put together a really good offense for the Green Bay Packers the last few years that he's been there. And while Aaron Rodgers may have seemed like the machine that kept everything rolling, Matt LaFleur now gets to work with a young Jordan Love who probably isn't going to question every decision that he has and is actually going to probably buy in a lot better and take the time to actually connect with his receivers and his running backs. Speaking of which, let's talk about his running backs. Jordan Love is going to get to work with one of the best running back duos in the entire NFL in both Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. These two guys are just dynamic and not just dynamic in the running game, but Aaron Jones is still a force in the passing game. So it's a running back that your linebackers actually have to contend with. And when you have a young linebacking core that includes Jack Campbell, and obviously you still have Alex Anzalone, you kind of have to contend with that because again, neither of these guys are great in one-on-one matchups in the event that they have to cover Aaron Jones out of the backfield. On top of that, your defensive line still has to be able to prove that they can contend against the run and be able to contain these running backs when being rushed at. Now, obviously, you've brought back Isaiah Buggs and you still have Aleem McNeil and you drafted a Broderick Martin to be able to help stop the run, but those guys are still going to be a test in both Dillon and Jones. And then when you look at the outside and you look at the wide receiver position, the Green Bay Packers do have guys out there that can make an impact on the game. Now, Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs and newly drafted Jaden Reed are not stars by any stretch of the imagination, but during last season we saw Christian Watson make an impact during a 5 to 6 week stretch where it seemed like he was a guaranteed touchdown. Romeo Dobbs was a rookie that actually built rapport with Aaron Rodgers and gained the trust to actually get a starting position. Those guys are going to have to obviously show that they've gotten better, but it's a young wide receiver core that's going to be going up against your newly formed secondary. Now, I have all the faith in the world in Cam Sutton, Jerry Jacobs, Emmanuel Mosley, and CJ GJ to be able to lock those guys down. But it's not a far stretch to say, like, hey, those wide receivers could give your new secondary a run for the money the 2 times they see them this upcoming season. Number 4 on this list might surprise a couple people, but it's another in-division rival in the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Minnesota Vikings are desperately trying to blow their team up. Don't ask me why, but they are. But when you look at them offensively, there are still pieces there that you really have to focus on if you don't want the Minnesota Vikings to get the better of you this upcoming season. This team was 7th in total yards per game last year, and not to mention 6th in passing. Now, this is all being led by a quarterback in Kirk Cousins that not a lot of people fear, but has still found a way to be effective and lead a top performing offense. And a lot of that is made easy when he's throwing to a guy like Justin Jefferson, who is either the number 1 or 2 or 3 wide receiver in the NFL, depending on where you want to slot him. And that's a tough test for any secondary, let alone a newly formed one where they are going to have to see him twice a year. I don't know how many times Cam Sutton or Emmanuel Mosley have lined up with Justin Jefferson, but if not, they're going to get a really good dose of him twice a year when they see Minnesota. Now, as for the running back situation, I honestly don't know what's going on there with Minnesota. Dalvin Cook is still currently on the roster, but Based off some things that we've seen on social media, it's possible that he could be on the way out. That would only leave you contending with Alexander Madison and newly drafted running back Dwayne McBride out of UAB. Now, neither one of those guys scare me, but the NFL has seen these late round running backs come into the league and make a splash. So I am by no means taking Dwayne McBride lightly, especially if they decide to move on from Dalvin Cook, which would be insane. Number 3 on this list, we finally get away from the NFC and start to focus on the AFC, and this team being the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens made the biggest splash and the biggest news this offseason when they were able to re-sign quarterback Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson is finally coming back to the Ravens, and it sounds like he's coming into a better situation and a situation that he's actually going to be happy in. And when Lamar Jackson wasn't happy, he was already putting up numbers. You're telling me now that he's going to be in a much better situation? Yeah. Baltimore Ravens is an offense that I would absolutely be concerned with. We all know about the duality of Lamar Jackson being able to run and throw the ball. Well, you add the fact that they just added a brand new offensive coordinator that is probably going to prioritize Lamar Jackson's passing more so than they have in the past. And in addition of that, they've also added more wide receiver help for Lamar. Odell Beckham Jr., while coming off of another serious knee injury, is still OBJ, and he's someone that you will always have to contend with out in that wide receiver position. On top of that, they drafted young rookie Zay Flowers, who was dynamic and was someone who was highly sought after during the drafting process by a lot of teams who were looking to upgrade their wide receiver core. Next, you have Rashad Bateman. And while Rashad Bateman has struggled with injuries during his short NFL career, when he's been available, he's been dynamic for Lamar Jackson. And on top of all of that, we all know how much the Ravens love their tight ends. Well, Mark Andrews is still there, and Isaiah Likely, who they drafted last year, is also available, and he had a number of big games, especially when Mark Andrews was out with injury at times. And let's not forget, this is still the Baltimore Ravens, and they still come from the AFC North, where they run the football. The Baltimore Ravens were second in rushing yards per game last year, and that was even with Lamar Jackson missing games due to injury. They have J.K. Dobbins. They drafted, much like the Minnesota Vikings, a rookie running back in Keaton Mitchell. And so that's another element of this team that you're going to have to contend with. Again, can the likes of Isaiah Buggs, Broderick Martin, Aiden Hutchinson, your other defensive end, and your linebacker core with Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone, like, can they corral this rushing attack and keep Lamar Jackson throwing the ball and at least forcing him to beat you with his arm as much as, and not as much with his legs? We're definitely going to see that when the Lions match up against the Ravens this year. Number 2 is another AFC team, and this time we're going to the AFC West. And no, it's not the Chiefs. It's actually the Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers may be like this unsung team in the AFC because they're not as flashy as the Kansas City Chiefs or as the Cincinnati Bengals or the Buffalo Bills. But the Chargers just find ways of having an efficient offense. Last year, they were 3rd in passing yards. They were 9th in total yards per game. And they have one of the younger, better quarterbacks in the NFL in Justin Herbert. Again, is Herbert Mahomes or Burrow or Allen? No, but he's still a high productive quarterback in the NFL right now. And he's someone that the Lions will absolutely have to be keyed in on because in a similar fashion to Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert can hurt you with his arm. And if you forget about the fact that he's mobile, he can still hurt you with his legs on occasion. Not to mention, the Los Angeles Chargers might have one of the better trio of receivers going into the 2023 season, as they're not only bringing out Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but they recently drafted Quentin Johnston out of TCU, who was a very highly sought after wide receiver in the drafting process as well. You have those 3 guys on the outside putting pressure on this new secondary. Last year, we saw communication be a big issue for the Detroit Lions. Their communication is going to have to be on point from the corners to the nickels to the safeties. They are going to have their hands full when going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Not to mention, Austin Eckler is still there. Again, we heard some rumblings in the beginning of the offseason that he's not very happy and that he would like a new contract. Unless he's moved before the Lions have to play them after their bye week, Austin Eckler is another force that you're going to have to contend with as both a runner and as a receiving threat. And number 1 on this list is a no-brainer. It's the first game of the season. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are the gold standard for prolific offenses in the NFL these days. With Andy Reid calling the plays, Patrick Mahomes executing the plays, and Travis Kelce just being this freak of nature at tight end, the Kansas City Chiefs are a handful. And we're really going to get a really good glimpse at this defense to see, like, hey, what you did at the end of the season in 2022, is that actually going to carry over? Have you found a way to contain some of these better offenses in the league and limit what they're able to do to you? Now, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Travis Kelsey. They're going to have moments, they're going to make plays, but can this defense come alive enough to limit their opportunities? You add in the fact that, again, Kansas City has the best passing attack in the NFL right now. They also have a decent and effective running game where, again, if you decide to just sell out and only worry about the pass, they have running backs that can hurt you. Isaiah Pacheco was a seventh round pick last year and still was able to get 830 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns as a seventh round pick. So he's still a running back that you have to contend with. On top of the fact that they did sound Jerick McKinnon back. So again, he's someone who can hurt you in the running game and in the receiving game as well. So those are the 5 offenses that I look at when I'm looking at the 2023 NFL schedule that I kind of say, like, hey, the Lions defense is really going to have to come alive and really show some vast improvement if we expect this team to really make the playoff push that we think they will. So let me know what you guys think of my list. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree? Do you think there's a team that should be on this list instead of the 5 teams that I listed? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new, and hey, do me a favor, share this video with somebody new as well. I appreciate you guys coming to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.